Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. I'm the Magi and Modern Horizons 3 is out and in the wild on Arena. And as you can see here, about 2/3 of our community is on board with this set at some level that feels appropriate to them, leaving about 1/3 of the community that is, well, hesitant. And it's those folks that I would like to address today. So we're going to be talking about some reasons that you might want to draft this set, and of course we're going to be talking about the top archetypes as a plan for those that will be drafting the set. And right off the bat, if you're in that bottom category and you don't really know what Modern Horizons 3 is or how it affects you as a budget player, I highly recommend doing a keyword search within my content for Modern Horizons 3 MH3 budget perspective, and that video should help clear things up for you and bring you up to speed. 2024 marks the 70th anniversary of the Godzilla franchise, and just like Godzilla, Modern Horizons 3 is going to be an absolute monster of a set. So if you want to throw your weight around just like Godzilla, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you find this video helpful, be sure to share it out on your favorite social media platform. Now, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, so yes, there are some reasons that everyone should be considering drafting this set. What your ultimate decision is, of course, is up to you, but there are definitely some things to think about. The first of which being that you want to make sure you are doing at least one draft each calendar month so that you get your rewards from ranking. Otherwise, you're at least missing out on one free pack and potentially a lot more. And you guessed it, Modern Horizons 3 is going to be the default draft option for June and July. But of course, I won't lie to you, it's not going to be the only option. Wilds of Eldrazi has been confirmed now through June 20th. And although they have not announced the July alternatives, based on my own tracking and prediction, it's very likely that Murders of Karloff Manor will be available to us as a quick draft option July 2nd through the 15th. So plan on doing something each of those months. The second big reason to consider participating in Modern Horizons 3 draft is the upcoming Midweek Magic for June 18th, which is only Modern Horizons 3 constructed. So you're gonna need some Modern Horizons 3 cards. And for those of you who aren't totally sold on Modern Horizons 3 as a set, or maybe don't play very much in the Eternal formats, this is a particularly important consideration because, of course, Midweek Magic typically will award 2 free standard rare or better ICRs or individual card rewards, so you will get non-Modern Horizons 3 cards as a reward for participating in this event. You could attempt to put together a deck for this event by simply buying and opening packs, and some really basic mathematics based on the fact that there's 8 cards to a pack, 5 colors in the game of Magic, and 2 colors in most of your decks. That would mean that you can expect about 3.2 playable cards per pack for any given 2-color combination. And that would mean that to get to a 35 card deck, you would need to open approximately 12 packs. And since you got 3 for free on the release date, that would mean buying 9 additional packs for about 1,800 gems. And particularly for someone who is maybe not 100% sold on this set or is not really an Eternal player, 1,800 gems worth of value could be a big outlay. Of course, that translates very easily into about 9,000 gold, or nearly 2 quick drafts. Sadly, quick draft is not going to be available to us as a budget alternative in time to be used for this Midweek Magic event. However, if you have been around the channel for a little while, hopefully you have followed my advice and picked up those opportune, discounted, easily accessible draft tokens. If we apply such a token to that same need for 35 playable cards to create a constructed deck, the draft will more than likely, if it's successful, give you at least 23 of those playables and could actually provide as many as 39, but to keep it conservative, let's just stick with 23. That's going to leave just 12 additional cards from packs, and if we applied that earlier mathematics of 3.2 playable cards per pack, that means you would need to open just 4 additional packs. And guess what? You got 3 on release day free from the arena team, and you get an additional pack from the draft event. No matter how poorly or well you finish, you get at least that 4th pack. That means you could come up with a reasonably playable deck for an average opportunity cost of only 625 gems. Same value, but about a third of the cost. And even if you think you'll never touch these cards or this deck again, believe me, one day you might change your mind, and creating the options now will give you a long-term positive result, whether that is the ability to play a fun deck in something like Timeless or Historic, or having some additional cards to play for your Brawl decks. There is such a low opportunity cost here that the benefits far outweigh the minute costs. And now that we've talked about why you should consider drafting, let's talk about ways to make this drafting work for you as a budget player. If you caught my budget perspective video for Modern Horizons 3, you know that there is a daunting 40 plus mechanical keywords, etc. for this set, but that there are really just 3 that you need to focus on as solid pathways for drafting this set. But before we start splitting those 3 pathways into good and bad options, let's talk about the 3 that unfortunately are pretty ugly and don't really make our action list at all. First up, a purely colorless draft deck, limited deck for this set is theoretically possible. But the added challenge of drafting playable cards, as well as making sure you have enough colorless sources, frankly might be a level of skill that not all of us have, and as such may need to be avoided. Similarly, the Dimir or Black-Blue Draw Matters deck has a lot of good enablers as well as payoffs. But getting the balance between those two and making sure you have sufficient bombs to ultimately win the game is again a level of skill that not everyone is going to have and is really much harder to accomplish than some of the other pathways that we will discuss. And lastly, sadly, Affinity on Arena is just not a real deck. At least not yet. Because until the Arena team decides to release the Mirrodin original artifact lands onto Arena, Affinity is just not going to have the power and push that it does in other formats, IRL Magic. There is also no real sense of urgency for them to do so, so we are probably looking 6 to 12 months at the earliest, with the most likely time being some sort of small package anthology release next spring. And before you get your hopes up, if and when these do get released, they will almost certainly not be at common, because it would absolutely wreck Historic Pauper. And in fact, there's very solid arguments that they will not be a low rarity at all, and more likely making an appearance as rares. I'm going to start our conversation about those three pathways with what I think is actually the most budget-friendly ones, and that are the mod decks, or the modified creature decks. Top of the list is the green-white aura mods, followed very closely by the black-green adaptive mods. And trailing slightly behind in Tier 2 is the Orzhov Death Matters mods. All of these combine very nicely both with your existing standard pool to make decks outside of the limited environment. They all should make adequately powerful limited environment decks, and they can all be supplemented with some very budget-friendly cards to give you even better eternal format deck options. Next up, let's talk about the energy decks, most represented by a white, blue, and red, particularly at lower rarities. I not only think this is going to be the best archetype to potentially spawn a new meta deck within formats like Timeless, I also think it has the potential to be very budget friendly. It is also the place that you're most likely to see a high functioning 3-color deck. Going heavily into 2 of the colors and then splashing the 3rd. They just seem to play very well together. And for those reasons, I think this is the best Tier 2 option available to us. And last but certainly not least are the 2 Eldrazi style decks. I think Aggro is going to be Tier 1, and the Eldrazi ramp is probably towards the bottom of Tier 2, again because of difficult execution and not because of power level problems, particularly within the limited environment. Quite the contrary, I think either of these decks, well executed within a draft, should perform very nicely. And now that we've formed a bit of a plan with regards to those draft archetypes and where we really want to be, let's tighten that up a little bit with some discussion about execution of that plan. And, well, let's be honest, that execution really comes down to selecting those high-performing, low-rarity cards as early as possible. Now, normally in my drafted videos, I highly recommend value drafting, or what some people would call rare drafting. But with a set like this that's not going to have a mastery pass, it's not going to have a plethora of free to you as a player packs, doing so does not really have the same incentives. Waiting to open your packs similarly does not protect your value in the way that it normally does. However, picking those high-performing, low-rarity cards in areas like green and white that only appear in the good Tier 1 as well as the quote-unquote bad Tier 2 make for solid additions to your draft limited deck as well as your collection. On an adjacent note, those gold signposts at both commons and uncommons, there are a number of those that are performing very highly. Some, like the red-green Writhing Chrysalis, are adding nearly 10% to your win rate as a common. I can't stress picking these up early and often enough. Similarly, there is one uncommon card at colorless that is worth considering, and that of course is the Glaring Flesh Raker, with its ability to help you ramp as well ping your opponent to death. Give this strong consideration for either version of the Eldrazi deck, and I absolutely would not consider building a colorless deck without one and preferably more copies of this card. And there it is, guys. That's the plan at a minimum. Use a draft token if you can. Build a deck and participate in June's Midweek Magic only Modern Horizons 3 event. And be sure to come back and do at least one draft each month. All of this will help you get extra value out of Modern Horizons 3 regardless of how much you plan on using the set. And before we go, I want to take just a moment to thank my totally awesome patrons for supporting me and allowing me to apply my passion into a community. And of course, before we go, I've got some suggestions for your next step.